Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Secure Remote Access to Azure, presented by Neovera, where you will learn more about increasing the security of remote users accessing resources in your Azure environment. Next. Everyone has heard about remote access and Azure, but I'm sure you are curious about what secure remote access to Azure truly is. How do you do it? What business drivers require such a solution? So today's webinar, we will help you understand how to accomplish this in your environment. We will also discuss a global case study where we designed and implemented the solution for a client. This secure solution included features such as MFA, VPN split tunneling, geographical routing, firewall technology research, redundancy implementation, and how we pass through the Azure public infrastructure to access more secure backend resources. Next. Our presenters for today aren't new to the cybersecurity scene and have a great wealth of knowledge on all things cyber. They have presented the last two cybersecurity webinars that Neovera has held, and these can be found on Neovera's website for your viewing pleasure. But for today's presentation, our first presenter is Greg Shanton, Vice President of Cybersecurity. Greg leads Neovera's cybersecurity professional and managed services for commercial and government clients. And he has over 25 years experience in the cybersecurity field. Our second presenter is Nestor Morjan, Senior Enterprise Security Architect. Nestor has over 30 years experience in IT specializing in cybersecurity, and he has been a key player in many major enterprise transformation projects. So before we start, if you have any questions, please post these in the window and we will do our best to answer at the end of the presentation. At this time, I am now going to hand this deck over to Greg Shanton. All yours, Greg.
Great, thank you, Shar. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone listening live to the webcast today, as well as those who will listen to this at a later time when it's been recorded. I want to thank you for joining the call today, and hopefully hopefully you find this very enlightening, the secure remote access topic. And Nestor's got a lot of details he's going to go through, but before we kick off with Nestor, what I wanted to do is just really quickly touch on Neovera. At Neovera, we're an organization that focuses around, we're an MSP, so managed services provider, cybersecurity services as well, and we also do consulting services around both those areas. So, and we focus on, our clients range from, like startup organizations to the Fortune 500, and we cover the cloud, public cloud, hybrid environments, on-premise environments, kind of mixing all that together, right? So as if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see, we're partnered with Microsoft. We also do work with up in Azure and AWS, as well as Equinix and Oracle and Citrix, right? So very key areas there. But again, it's MSP, cybersecurity services, consulting services. If you're looking for that type of support, that's exactly what we do. And so today, before I hand over to Nestor, it's like he's going to go over secure remote access, and he's going to go over to a case study around it that we did for a specific client. So Nestor, without further ado, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. First, let's lay down some groundwork. What is it that we're talking about? So it's really accessing the Azure infrastructure through a very secure manner, authenticated and authorized, and we'll go into very much detail of exactly how we're going to be doing that. The question is, why do we need this? Because everybody can get on there with ID and password, but we know nowadays that through recent events in the industry, there's a lot of bad actors out there, and there's a lot of threat capabilities out there to penetrate your environment. So it's more of completely securing the stack down from the network layer, data layer, all the way to the user layer, how we access the environment. There's been a whole bunch of data breaches, some non-secure interfaces and APIs that perhaps your developers have created, and you don't know they're being used and attacked. Some operating system vulnerabilities. Again, if you don't have a managed services like ours, Are you keeping your OSs up to date? These things are coming out every single day from the vendors. Sometimes you may have some folks coming in your environment, doing the hijacking of traffic. They sniff your network if they're consultants or contractors that happen to be within your network. They can sniff and hijack your account, act like you, and since you have access to things. So we need to figure out how do we prevent that. Obviously, you know, malware and a whole bunch of ransomware that's been prevalent in the news lately. The ongoing viruses, again, these things have to be updated almost on a daily basis. And sometimes when you know these bad guys can't get in, they get frustrated and they do denial of service attacks. So they'll hit your website at 10,000 events per second or something like that, so nobody else can get on, right? So what kind of cloud security breaches? There's data privacy and confidentiality problems. Not only the information data you store that may have regulatory compliance. If that gets breached, what happens? You know, what kind of legal ramifications you have. Data loss, hopefully you fix that with the proper backup and disaster recovery plan. That's pretty easy nowadays. But if the data has been compromised, do you know that? Are you at the data layer, understanding that this field was modified from yes to no? Very, very difficult to do, right? And there's the legal implications in case you have client information, like in the case study that we're going to talk about today. What if your client's data that you're holding gets compromised? You'll be at a legal situation with your client potentially. So what are we talking about? What's the value proposition for doing this secure remote access? Well, it's actually been done all the way from the mainframe to the distributor over years with different kinds of technologies for different kinds of reasons. So what's different when the cloud? Well, the difference is you're directly accessible from the internet, and that's really the actual issue. It's not everything in the data center where you could put, the brick and mortar, you could put, metal gates around it so nobody touches it unless they're inside. But once you go for a lot of business reasons to the cloud, you're really exposed. So let me share with you a reference architecture that Neovera has come up with, and we'll use that as a hypothesis for this use case. So if I were to do this, I have, different kinds of users coming in from dedicated lines from different backend offices going into this infrastructure. But I also have these remote users that may not be in the brick and mortar where you have these VPN tunnels coming in directly to the firewalls. So they may be on a laptop on Starbucks, or they could be on their phone accessing your applications. So we want to make sure we protect, this particular type of user. In the Azure environment, we have the backend where, we would have, Office 365, some of your servers, SQL Server. So we'll access that through some kind of firewall in the front end. Perhaps we could use a VPN gateway if we're doing VPN direct tunnel, VPN access directly to this firewall. But we also use network security groups so that we can say manage from destination or from source to destination by port to get back to these VNets and by protocol. So Azure has this network security group that we do those rules for to the back end. The good thing is that even if you just log into Azure login portal, the main login portal, your credentials are validated against Active Directory and with an ID and password. And if you turn on MFA, the token for that multi-factor authentication gets back to you as a user, and then from then on, you have an encrypted tunnel that you can speak to. Now, Azure has a bunch of different security tools. The thing that we have experienced with some of our customers is there are too many security tools. It's how we put these together, how we script some of these things. They do have a really good SIEM solution called Azure Sentinel that you see these little icons here. Think of them as agents everywhere. And those agents talk to the Azure Defender database that feeds the SIEM solution and so on. So we're going to use this kind of model to hit the requirements for this particular use case. So the client is and of course we're not going to discuss who the client is for privacy reasons, but it's a multinational SaaS company, which helps a lot of the Fortune 500 retailers, manufacturers, distributors, to get all their data and all their infrastructure that they want to share with their clients available for retail purposes. So their SaaS solution is in multiple distinct Azure environments in Western Europe and Northern North America. And that becomes one of the issues that we're going to talk about, the localization of the information and the segregation of this information. And how do we access that securely from one central location? So here's the problem and the plan end state as we gather the requirements from them. The objectives is over here, we see secure access to different Azure environments, because we're going to have two, the back office and the production environment. So back office is, the Exchange, Office 365, those kind of other servers that we may have up there. But production environment and the multiple production environments is really what they're trying to protect. That's where the clients live. So the other thing is, I mentioned, since they're in Europe and North America, and actually they're global, but a lot of the resources, we want to make that auto-geographically routed to the right resource. And we'll see in the diagrams later on how we accomplish that. We also want to route them based on their role. Are they employees? Are they contractors? Based on that, they will route them through a particular VPN tunnel. And that was the more difficult part of how to do this, how to route this, because of some of the limitations that are within Microsoft Azure. And we'll go into that in a minute. So the challenges is, again, they're all over the place, geography-wise, all over the world. The clients and the clients of the clients, right? So we're providing the SaaS solution for our clients to provide their wares, if you will, to their clients. So it's three-tier architecture here. So they, again, as we talked about, require the split tunneling to go to the specific authenticated backend resources that they need to have access to. One of the challenges is the Azure vWANs cannot provide the split tunneling, because what they do is they provide dynamic IP addresses. So you have that in the front, and whenever somebody comes in, the backend resources are constantly dynamically changing the IP addresses. And unfortunately, we can't use that, because the actual product set, the actual applications are addressed per client using FQDN, fully qualified domain name. So we can't not use the dynamic IP allocation that Microsoft provides out of the box. So this is the first part that we needed. In order for us to route somebody through a specific tunnel, we needed to use the fully qualified domain name. So that was a big challenge for us to do. So we just replaced it. We just didn't use the Microsoft. We used another type of technology. So the plan end state is, again, they're going to have secure point to site. Point meaning that customer, wherever they're at, to this particular site using SSL VPN based access. Okay, and that's, again, we're going to split that off between internal and external employees and consultants, and I'll share with that in a minute. We're also going to use multi-factor authentication, so it's just not ID and password. We're going to further secure it with, again, the MFA provided by Azure. And again, that particular technology we're going to use for this infrastructure will have to support the split tunneling. Okay. So here's a typical use case. Sorry for the UML diagram, but I think it explains it very well. So we have a particular user, and this user can be an employee who has access to the backend office down here, or it could be an employee that supports the production resources back here, or it could be a contractor that can do either one, right? So the VPN client, we start with that technology, does the URL, resolves the URL for that VPN tunnel to the particular traffic manager within Azure. So he accesses that through a fully qualified domain name. So I want to go to neovera.com. It will go and resolve that. It will now route you to the right firewall based on if you're in North America or you're in Asia or you're in Europe. So it will get you to the right firewall based on geolocation. At that moment, if you were authorized, because again, you've already been authenticated and your role is an internal employee, you could get to the back office. So that's authorized through Azure AD and also to LDAP group membership to get to the backend production resources. So the only strange thing is you see this here, this user can come in directly through this Azure public infrastructure or other users versus the internal gateways that we set up for an employee. So these production resources are setting up as multiple ones of these for each other are their clients. And then again, we'll use the group membership to allow them to go point to the right resource in the back. So at a very, very high level, right, the logical view is these guys will now, via geographic location, go to the right firewall, and the right firewall will get them, based on who they are, to the back office, or go outside to the Azure public infrastructure to the production resources where we put yet another firewall, because again, people can access this directly here without going through all this security checks up front. So we'll create the split tunnel at that time. Okay. So if we look at the sequence detail of how they peruse through the different checks, the VPN client of the user does the DNS query. Remember, they're giving you a FQDN, and based on that, the traffic manager, this is an actual piece of code in Azure, will geographically route you to the right firewall, right? So firewall 1 is responsible for Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East. Firewall 2 is the US and really the rest of the world. So once we get through the right firewall, there's an Azure authentication using SAML. So user ID and password requests are going back to the user. When that passes, it goes to MFA authentication, and that token gets put back into the credentials for that remote user. At that moment, he's authenticated now to go to the back office or to go to the Azure public infrastructure. And that's based on their group membership. So it's employee A, customer B, client C, contractor X, or Y and Z, okay? So that's the sequence of events as we traverse how we start that tunnel. That tunnel is really managed here back in at the VPN client once all these checks are done. So this is the detailed logical solution we came up with. So on the left-hand side is again the end user who's equipped with a client VPN. You'll see these little icons here. It's really Azure Defender. Think of them as agents. They're going to monitor any and all security concerns and rules that we have. They also have MFA installed in their device. So they do the DNS query that resolves to this traffic manager within Azure. And within Azure, because based on who you are, you're going to get through the right subnet to the right firewall. So this particular firewall supports Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East. This one is the US and the rest of the world. Once you're already authenticated, right, you are then traversed over to the back office to multiple subnets here. These two firewalls have backup for each other. So if you can't get through there, you can get through here. And if you can't get to this subnet, you get to that subnet. So it's pretty redundant. We have Office 365, but they have a bunch of other file servers and SQL databases that they have access to in the back. We're also using network security groups. Again, this, by the time it gets to the physical network, the traffic itself, there are rules that we set up in terms of the source, the destination, the port, and the protocol. So a particular protocol will go to this, a particular port will go through here, a particular protocol to databases and behind the scenes. But also, depending on, again, who you are and what group membership you are, you have access to go externally to the Azure public infrastructure. From there, you'll hit a firewall again, because some people may come directly from here and bypass all these firewall rules. So back here, then we'll use the NSG group rules to tell you there's a whole bunch of these subnets. So think about each of these subnets as one of their clients, or one of our clients, as you will, with a bunch of resources behind the scenes. So this load balancer will then route traffic to the proper client behind the scenes. Now you see these Azure Defender icons everywhere. We've also instrumented, as Greg has said, we do cybersecurity monitoring and managed services. We use Sentinel. Neovera got in bed with Microsoft early on as an alpha customer. We talked to product management and development in Israel with them, so we were early adopters and have already implemented for this international customer all over the world. So a bunch of these agents, if you will report to Azure Defender, which will send information to Sentinel. We also create the log analytics based on the logs that we gather from all these firewalls and network devices. And Security Center, again, allows us to create a lot of rules of what is important for us to see. And once they get up to Sentinel, we have a bunch of rules up there to integrate with the service management service ticket, and then we do alerting and subsequent automation to fix problems that we see. So we have implemented this. We're almost finished. A lot of this is already in place. All the security controls and all the monitoring is in place. All these are in place. The back office is in place, and we're just fixing some of the security here with this firewall for the production services. So in summary, part of the problem was we really needed to have a split between these two areas here. So that's what we call, the split tunneling. So the right people will get to this, the right people will get to that. And the third option is the same people, maybe system administrators, can get to both environments. But we were able to secure every single step of the way through this transmission, through all these protocols, through all these firewalls to get to the right place. And that's really the technical explanation of what we achieved. Again, Neovera is available for consulting. This is pretty elaborate, how we execute it. And there's a bunch of little details that are not in this logical diagram, but that's how we successfully done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Greg.
Hey, great. Thanks, Nestor. If you actually go back to the previous slide for a second.
Sure.
So the one thing with like what you guys are seeing on the screen here is, the secure remote access solution that's being described here from Nestor in the last few slides. It's not a unique requirement. Basically, if you're going to go ahead and put your back office resources up there, which is in the middle, and Nestor, you could use your, yep, thank you, sir, for doing that right there. You can think of infrastructure as a service, okay? And you still need to protect that, right? You're going to protect that. You want secure access to that. That's whether the back office was sitting in a private data center or if it's sitting up in the cloud, in this case in Azure, or if it's over in AWS or wherever it happens to be. You want to protect that because also you don't want to have data leakage as well, like as you've been talking about for years up in the cloud, right? And protect that. So that's one thing. So if you can do that, that's infrastructure as a service. Think about it that way. So you're putting up your own VMs, your own virtual machines up there. Whatever they are, Windows, Linux, file servers, SQL servers for database, et cetera, all they're protected and getting in there securely, right? For whether it's an administrator or whether it's a finance person or whether it's a marketing person that needs to share information and get content out of there, right? You can think of, if you start using more of the PaaS services or platform as a service or that type of deal, that's more towards, let's say, towards the bottom in a little bit in a way, right? And a lot of those services are exposed up in Azure to the public, like the public Azure infrastructure. So you need to also protect that as much as possible as well, and protect access to that. And then there's people that do the combination of IaaS and PaaS, right? So you can protect all that together. But even if you're just using infrastructure service, yes, you can log on. If you're, log on to the Azure portal and get into SharePoint and do your Microsoft email and OneDrive, et cetera, all that. That's a separate piece, right? on this. But if you're using Azure up there and you're putting servers and your content and your data up there in databases, structured or unstructured data, there's a lot of good controls you need to do to put that in protection mode, right? And that's what we're showing here. And the load balancing here for the geo load balancing done between US and Europe, it could be, East Coast and West Coast of the United States. It could be the PAC rim and Europe, PAC rim in the United States, wherever it happens to be. So it's an important thing to do based on the use cases and the personas that you have, then leading into actors, et cetera, of how we build things. So, and go ahead, Nestor, go ahead and move to the next slide. So the key pieces here, and we talked about this in the initial Azure, demystifying Azure cybersecurity in more detail, that webinar. But number one today is multi-factor authentication. One thing that if you want to limit the exposure as much as possible, this is one of the most cost-effective things that you can do today in MFA, even if it's just the phone with your OTP or your one-time password. Hopefully you're using the app that comes on the phones as well, right? So Microsoft's obviously got one, Okta's got one, Duo's got one. There's a whole bunch out there in the market, right? So definitely look at that, and you got to make sure you pick one that's compatible with what use cases you have that you need to share with. If you're all in on Microsoft, okay, Microsoft's easy, right? But if you're in a whole bunch of different applications, et cetera, right? That's where that you have to go ahead and have, single sign-on support plus MFA. That's where you need to look at what's going to be the broadest support there, besides maybe something like what they call SAML, or Secure Assertion Markup Language, from many eons, or it's been around for a long time. Second thing is what you heard Nestor talk about as well is make sure you have some type of you can call it like endpoint security. You can call it EDR, enterprise. You can call it TDR for threat. You can call it XDR for the extended detection and response or remediation piece. People call it all different things, right? It's basically getting the threat hunting and the anti-malware, antivirus endpoints on all of your endpoints out there, right? Laptops, desktops, etc., right? And then pulling that up to one single pane of glass. Doesn't matter, if it's Defender, if it's Sophos, pick your vendor of choice, right? In this particular example, there's talks about hey, Defender for different user endpoints and Windows and Linux servers, and then of course you can go ahead and have Defender across all the various apps up in Azure, which is very nice. Third point is that up in Azure, there's network security groups or NSGs. Nestor touched on that as well, but there's also firewalls. There's Microsoft brand firewalls, Microsoft brand web application firewalls, but there's also third parties, your traditional WatchGuards, Fortinets, Palo Alto, Cisco, Checkpoint, iBoss, etc. They're all, a lot of them are all up there. And quite frankly, it just depends on what your use cases are of which one's the best for you. It may not be the brand name, right? You've got to really look technically business-wise what you're trying to solve, and focus on the use cases that you're trying to solve, and buy what you need, not necessarily what what you want, because up there there's cost for compute up there as well as processing, so it does add up. So definitely study that hard as well, the cost factor for a lot of these devices. And then the last piece is another item that Nestor touched on that we see as well, is you really want to monitor across your entire infrastructure for visibility. Quite frankly, this is something that's been missed a lot, and this has been missed a lot for the last 10 or 15 years. And it's not new, it's been around for a long time, but the bottom line is that hackers break into systems and they hide in systems and they wait to go ahead and attack. And the worst case is when they do a coordinated attack. There was an automation tool that was hacked this year that they were hacked in there for a long time, and then they did a coordinated attack around the United States Independence Day, right before that, on that Friday afternoon when a lot of people were taking off. Very smart, intelligent hackers from overseas that came after the United States hard, right? There's a lot of other ones in the past, with other various retail organizations that have been hacked, and they've been hacked for years before people knew that they were in there. You can Google all that, you can see all that. I won't talk about any specific names or that on this webinar, but SIM tools, understanding how to collect the data, how to visualize the data, how for near real time, inspection, within minutes, right? Forensics on the backside, looking at data, right? So what we usually call dashboards, Microsoft calls workbooks, and then how to automate that. And there's a lot of buzzwords for automation like SOAR, security orchestration, SOAR, right? And so there's how do you automate a lot of things on the backside? And there's a lot of misinformation out there about the value of automation on the backside. You really got to really focus on what the things are where you can go ahead and decrease your risk and manpower as you try to orchestrate all this. The other piece is very nice is that in Azure, right, and you should definitely look at it, is Security Center has one of the leading products out there for vulnerability scanning, say a limited version built into it, right? So that's nice because you can do internal vulnerability scanning on your VMs, for example, to see what vulnerabilities you have potentially on those boxes inside, and they understand how Azure is versus just running any old scanner on the devices, and they may not understand what the relation is to vulnerabilities sitting in a cloud environment versus a vulnerability sitting in a private data center or on-prem. Go to the next slide. So like we've been talking about, really, from our side for around cybersecurity services, we can come in and we can help design, implement, integrate, and do all the engineering services around all the security monitoring, around all the XDR pieces we've talked about. If you need to put firewalls up, if you need to go and figure out how to secure VMs, the entire environment, how to link it, whether it's localized, let's say in the United States, or if you have a global environment, being able to pull that all together. And we also design all that, do all the consulting services for that, but also manage it. So we just don't walk away after we've designed something. If you need someone to actually manage for you 24/7, so you can focus on your core business, what your business is, whether you're a government agency, whether you're a retail organization, whether you're a consulting organization not in security, whether that you're a bank, or insurance agency like that. That's something that we can definitely help you out with. And the way we engage is, we come in, we have a team, we have technical project managers, number one. Number two, we have architects, engineers, and threat analysts, and it's an integrated team. And that is, kind of like one of our logos on the right-hand side is everything we're looking at to do is how do we prevent, how do we detect, and how do we remediate against security attacks. Next slide. So a lot of information has been thrown at you over the past half an hour. Look, it's really easy to engage with us, how we engage with customers is one, if depending where you are, you have 3 on-ramps. One, we can engage with you with a half-day workshop to talk to you about what we talked about today or any of the other items around the consulting services we've talked about. 2 is if you're trying to make the leap to the cloud, if you need help around that to understand your processes, your procedures, your technology that you're using today, we can help out with the readiness assessment around that, for security as well as non-security items. And then 3, if you've already done all that and you're ready to go forward and you're ready to start design and implementation, we can help you at that on-ramp as well. We come to you, we can pick up and start with your design implementation. And then, like I said, we don't just walk away. If you need us to manage it, we can help manage it for you 24/7, 365 as well. So again, I want to thank you guys today for attending the webinar. At this point, I want to hand back to Shar because I think, Shar, don't we have a poll question for the team as well?
Yes, we do. So let's go ahead and start the poll question. So what topics around Azure security would you like to see next? Security monitoring services using Microsoft Sentinel, Azure Identity and Access Management, Azure Data and Database Security, Azure Network and Web Application Firewall, or Azure Active Directory User and Resource Management, or all 5 of them. So I think some of you have seen these questions before, and based upon your responses, this is the reason that we had actually presented secure remote access to Azure today. We had quite a few people requesting that.
Yeah, sure. That's what I was going to say. Is last time we wanted secure remote access, so that's what we did. So it'll be interesting to see what the results are this time.
Well, let's see. What do we have? Well, 100% of people would like to see all of them, so we better start going.
All right. So another 5 webinars, right? So yeah, absolutely.
That is right. So let's go ahead and see if there are any questions that need to be answered from our attendees.
And Shar, while we're waiting on that, I would like to say, that, in October, we've got for National, Cybersecurity Month awareness, or Awareness Month, we've got some big plans, don't we?
Yes, huge plans. Be a very busy month.
Yeah, so I think we have 4 webinars planned for that month, 1 per week.
Yes. Yep, it'll still be every Thursday, but I think there's going to be some great information. There's going to be some previous information, but with a little bit more added ideas to it. But then, yeah, we'll definitely have a live recording as well, and I'm looking forward to it. Lots going on.
Yeah, I think on October 21st, folks can mark the calendar now. We should have a very, very interesting and detailed, maybe a little bit longer than 30 minutes, but on hybrid security monitoring. Everyone just said they wanted to see the Azure one, right? So we're going to be covering Azure and also on-prem, and even if people are up in AWS and on in private data centers. So we've talked about that, and that's going to be just a month out from now on Thursday, October 21st. So they should all be getting emails on that, coming back out from Neovera.
Yes. Well, it looks like there aren't any questions right now, but with that being said, if you guys do happen to have any further questions, please reach out to us and email us at info@neovera.com, and we'll be happy to set up a time to speak with you further about your questions, your thoughts, what you are doing for next steps. And also, in addition to sending out a link to this recording today, we will also be sending the global case study that was referenced in our PowerPoint. So with that being said, thank you all for attending our webinar and wishing you a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend. Thank you all.